The Iron Claw is a new film from A24 written and directed by Sean Durkin. This is the story, a biopic covering the life of the professional wrestling family known as the Von Erichs, with patriarch Fritz Von Erich and his sons, and their triumphs and their tragedies. So, me being an actual fan of pro wrestling and a wrestling historian, I'm very familiar with the story of the Von Erichs. And if you know about wrestling, even if you aren't a super hardcore historian, there's tons of information out there about the Von Erichs, and chances are you've heard about the tragedy of that family and just the absolute just terrible moments that Kevin had to go through in his life. Now, this film is basically told from the perspective of Kevin Von Erich. He's the guy who sort of takes the lead role here, and through him is where we see the life of the other Von Erichs, such as Carrie, David, and of course Fritz and Doris and Mike. Now, we're going to talk about the pros and the cons here. First of all, as far as performances go, great work from Zac Efron, who plays Kevin Von Erich, and I really want to put over Holt McElhaney, who does a fantastic job at getting all the mannerisms right for Fritz Von Erich. The only thing he didn't have is the super grovelly voice, but man, did he have the mannerisms, the attitude, the presence of Fritz Von Erich. Also, Michael J. Harney plays Bill Mercer, who was the host and lead announcer for World Class. He does a pretty good job. Most of the main actors, though, that played the Von Erichs, Jeremy Allen White as Carrie and Stanley Simmons as Mike, did a pretty good job. But when you talk about biopics, right, they're never going to be 100% perfect. And with this story, there are things that are obviously imperfect about the film and stuff that was left out. It's a 2-hour movie, so to properly tell the entire story of the Von Erich family would take probably a couple of movies, if not at least 3 hours. But one of the things that was missing from this movie was a Von Erich. Chris Von Erich is nowhere to be found in this. Chris was one of the brothers who also took his own life because of depression and other things like that. He was very prone to injuries. He is nowhere to be found. He doesn't exist in this film. That was weird to me. I'm not going to say that it was necessarily something I don't understand, because I know that it was a big family and you can't focus on everybody. But Chris Von Erich not being there was also, I wouldn't say it took away from the story. It's just, if you know the Von Erichs, is going to be a bit distracting. I thought the actual movie itself, the filmmaking, the directing, the acting, the cinematography, all of that was great. They really got that Sportatorium looking the way it used to look. They really got the aesthetics of how world-class championship wrestling was. They nailed that, and the movie has a ton of heart and is very sad. I'm not going to lie to you, man. This is a depressing movie. This is not a happy Christmas film. What Kevin Von Erich went through in his life, nobody deserves to go through, in my opinion. And you see him trying to deal with and overcome tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. And to this day, I wonder about the real man, Kevin Von Erich. Like, what's going on in his head? But it does serve a happy ending to a degree, because if you know the real ending of Kevin Von Erich, he has a huge family now, kids, grandkids. So all that love he had for his brothers and for his father and his mother, he can now give to them. And so at the end of the day, he turned out okay. But they sort of, there's an interview clip of Kevin Von Erich saying, "I used to love being a brother, and now I'm not a brother anymore." And they use that line in the film. There's a lot of things about the movie that I recognize, being somebody who's so familiar with this story. Now, because of that, there are things that people who are not wrestling fans are not going to understand. So I will say that. For example, the Fabulous Freebirds are obviously in this film. They don't really focus too much on them, even though the Fabulous Freebirds were definitely the Von Erichs' biggest rivals in the hottest period down there in Dallas, Texas. I mean, if you don't know about the Von Erichs, Dallas, Texas in the 80s was their ground. Like the Von Erichs were like, think about like when the boy bands were really hot in like 2000, 2001, like when NSYNC, they were like that. They had girls ripping on their clothes. Like these guys were celebrities. Everybody in Dallas loved them. So if you're not familiar with certain things, they don't focus too hard on it, but obviously the more you know about the Von Erich story and world class, the more you'll pick up on things. Like for example, the Sheik was in this movie, played by Chavo Guerrero Jr., interestingly enough. Also, as many of you know, Lance Von Erich, who was not really a Von Erich, there's a whole interesting story behind that. He is not an actual member of the family. He was played by current AEW heavyweight champion Maxwell Jacob Friedman. And I was looking forward to seeing this, but guess what? He has literally less than maybe 7 seconds of screen time, maybe a little more, maybe 15 seconds, and is in a non-speaking role. They don't tell you anything about Lance Von Erich. They don't tell you anything about that story. You're just supposed to either know or have it not be important. Because really, Lance Von Erich not really being a Von Erich is not that important to the life of the Von Erichs. Clearly, it was something memorable that people from the time period remember, and wrestling fans kind of have it on many trivia notes. But MJF does not even speak. He just literally flexes his muscles and does a couple of wrestling moves, and that's it. They don't even explain anything to you. Also, Aaron Dean Eisenberg played Ric Flair. Not a very good Ric Flair. It's hard to do Ric Flair, and the interview that they used for this film, they actually took lines from another interview that Ric Flair did in the NWA, not in World Class, in the Carolinas on Turner TBS, and they used those lines. So again, being a wrestling fan, you're able to pick up on this. This is not a nitpick necessarily. I knew they were going to make changes because all these biopics have it. I mean, even Bohemian Rhapsody moved the Wembley concert to after Freddie Mercury was already diagnosed with AIDS, with HIV, and that's not how it was in the real world. Something similar happens here. Obviously, you know that Kerry Von Erich becomes the heavyweight champion. The way it went here is in real life, he lost the title to Ric Flair in Japan days later. In this version of the story, he gets to his motorcycle accident. So, and it happens very quickly. They don't really harp on it. You're not really sure what's going on. You see Kerry on the motorcycle, and then all of a sudden you see him on crutches, and he's missing a foot. And let me tell you, there was a groan in the audience, like a gasp. I knew it was coming because I knew the story, but they didn't know. And they actually show like Kerry trying to relearn how to walk with a fake leg, which is a true story. This man wrestled with a fake foot for the last few years of his career. That actually happened, man. And you literally see him trying to and falling in pain. And it just, from the midway point on, the movie is just depressing. But the thing is, it's depressing and all that, but it's true. Like, these events happened. Maybe the times were a little bit off. In fact, they were quite a bit off. And there's no Chris Von Erich. And, there's different sort of... I can go into and nitpick, like, every little thing they got wrong. But ultimately, it is a good movie. It's a sad movie. It's a depressing movie. Also, I want to give credit. I do want to give a shout out to Kevin Anton, who played Harley Race. That dude really got close to nailing the real Harley Race, man. Like, he didn't have the grovel, but the way he wrestled and the way he moved was very much like the real Harley Race. These guys did their homework. There's no argument there, and it's a hell of an effort. Again, it is a bummer of a movie to end the year with. I might go back and watch Godzilla -1 again, but this could be the end of my theater-going experience for 2023. We got a week left in the year, so I don't know if there's anything else I want to see before the end of the year, but this was a good film. It was a very well-made movie. It's already gotten tons of positive reviews, but man, it's powerful, it's sad, and if you've lost any siblings in your life or anybody, it will hit you. It's a very, very, very depressing story. And in parts of the movie did feel very much like a documentary. But if you want to learn the full story of the Von Erichs, there is good news for you. There are 2 documentaries for you to watch. And they're good, trust me. Heroes of World Class is on YouTube right now. The entire 2.5 hour documentary for free is on YouTube right now. Heroes of World Class. And the other one is called Triumph and Tragedy of World Class Championship Wrestling. That's a WWE made documentary, one of their better ones on Peacock / WWE Network. So if you really want to get an idea of the real people and what happened, that's where you want to go. Plus, you get a lot more tidbits about World Class and kind of where it stood. The movie didn't really focus that much on the company. It was more on the family. And I really am curious to see what scenes were deleted from this film, because I wonder if there was more with Lance Von Erich, or if there was more with, Carrie and Fritz, and just it. They did the best they could for 2 hours, and it was a good film. I enjoyed it. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Iron Claw. Did you see it? Let me know down below if you did and what you thought, and I'll talk to you next time.